$300. That's what you've earned from me. My father said those exact words in the middle of my wedding reception, while my new husband was standing close enough to hear every syllable and his mother was looking right at us. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're new here, subscribe, because what happened at my wedding was only the beginning of something I never saw coming. My name is Celine. I had been planning that wedding for 2 years, mostly by myself, on a budget I had built from scratch. My husband Desmond and I had paid for nearly everything: the venue deposit, the catering, my dress, the flowers I arranged myself the morning of. We weren't wealthy. Desmond worked in logistics. I was a hospital records coordinator. We had saved every spare dollar for 18 months to make that day happen. My father had offered to contribute once, early in the planning, and when I walked him through the numbers, he went quiet. He said he'd see what he could do. I let it go. I was used to letting things go with him. My mother died when I was 9 years old. Her name was Bonnie. She was 32 when she passed, and I have spent most of my life holding on to the fragments she left behind. The particular slant of her handwriting, a bottle of lotion on my aunt's bathroom shelf that still smelled like her years after she was gone, a photograph where she's laughing at something out of frame. I never found out what was so funny. I never got to ask. My father remarried 3 years after she died. His wife, Loretta, was pleasant enough on the surface, but she was never warm toward me the way she was with her own son, Caleb, who came along 2 years into their marriage. I told myself it was natural. Stepfamilies took time. I made excuses for everyone in that house for a very long time. My father wasn't cruel in obvious ways. He never raised his voice. He just had this way of making me feel like I was always slightly less than what he expected. When I got into college, he shrugged and said I should have aimed higher. When I graduated without debt because I'd worked 3 part-time jobs throughout my degree, he asked why it had taken me 4.5 years. When I got engaged, he said the ring looked small. There was always something. And I always found a way to absorb it and keep going. So on my wedding day, I had already lowered my expectations. I wasn't waiting for a speech that would bring everyone to tears. I wasn't hoping he'd pull me aside and tell me how proud he was. I just wanted the day to be peaceful. I wanted to stand in that outdoor venue with the string lights overhead, and the smell of late summer honeysuckle in the air, and feel like I had built something good out of everything I'd been through. For most of the reception, it was exactly that. Desmond's mother danced with his aunts near the edge of the dance floor. My college roommate gave a toast that made half the tables laugh and the other half reach for napkins. The food was good, the music was right, and I kept catching Desmond's eye across the room and just smiling for no reason. Then my father found me near the bar during a quiet moment between songs. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. For half a second, I thought he might pull out a card, something handwritten and sentimental. He handed me an envelope instead. "Here," he said. I took it. "What's this?" "Your wedding gift." I opened it. Inside was $300 in cash, 650s folded once. I stood there looking at them. The string lights were still glowing. Someone at a nearby table was laughing. "Dad," I started. $300, he said, louder now, not bothering to lower his voice. "That's what you've earned from me." The laughter at the nearby table stopped. I looked up at his face. There was no humor in it, no warmth, just something cold and deliberate, like he had been waiting for this particular moment. Desmond appeared at my side. He had heard. I could tell by the way he went very still. "You've always done things your own way," my father added. "Now you can keep doing that." He handed the envelope to me with the kind of energy someone uses when passing over a receipt, excused himself, and walked towards the drinks table like nothing had happened. Desmond put his hand on my back. I felt him lean close and say something, but I couldn't process the words. I was staring at the envelope. $300, on my wedding day, in front of everyone. My aunt found me 20 minutes later. Estelle is my mother's younger sister, the only person from my mother's side of the family who stayed close after she died. My father had never made it easy for her. He moved us twice when I was a teenager. Changed his number without warning once. She had kept finding me anyway. She caught me standing outside near the edge of the venue, pretending to get some air. "I saw what he did," she said quietly. "It's fine," I said. She touched my arm. "It's not fine." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And there's something I've been wanting to tell you for a very long time." She glanced back toward the entrance. Not here, not tonight, but Celine, your mother did not leave you with nothing. I turned to look at her. Come see me next week, she said. Bring Desmond. Give yourself time because what I have to show you is going to take a while to get through. Before I could ask another word, Desmond's mother came through the side door looking for us, and my aunt squeezed my hand once and let go. I stood there another moment after she walked back inside. The music had started again. Someone called my name. I tucked the envelope into my small bridal bag, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked back in to finish my wedding. But something had shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just wondering why my father treated me the way he did. I was wondering what he might have taken from me. We drove to my aunt's house the week after we got back from our honeymoon. She lived 40 minutes north of us in a small house with an overgrown front garden and a dining room table always buried under books and papers. She had the coffee ready before we sat down. She went to the back bedroom and returned carrying a manila envelope held with a rubber band, soft at the corners from years of careful handling. She placed it on the table and sat across from us. Your mother came to me before she died, she said. She knew she was running out of time, and she wanted to make sure you were protected. She pushed the envelope toward me. This is what she put in place. I removed the rubber band and opened it. Inside were photocopies of a life insurance policy, a letter on bank letterhead, and a 2-page notarized document. I read the first line of the policy and sat back in my chair. $200,000. She took it out the year before her diagnosis, my aunt said. She knew something was wrong before the doctors caught it. She named you as the primary beneficiary. She folded her hands on the table. You were 9. She couldn't give it directly to a child, so she set up a trust to hold the money until you turned 21. Your father was appointed trustee. Desmond leaned forward, and when she turned 21, my aunt looked at her hands. I called him that year. I asked whether Celine had received the funds. He told me the policy had lapsed years earlier, that there was nothing to distribute. She paused. I should have demanded proof. I should have hired an attorney right then. I trusted him because he was still her father, and I've regretted it every year since. I thought about my 21st birthday. I had been living in a dorm room with a mattress I'd bought off a Facebook listing, working weekends at a restaurant to cover my textbooks. My father had sent a birthday card with a $20 bill tucked inside. I had called him that week. I remembered this so clearly now, and asked if there was anything at all, that my mother had left for me. He had said, "She didn't have much, sweetheart." He said it the way you say something that's just simply true. I had believed him. I had thanked him for telling me and hung up and gone back to my homework. I sat at my aunt's table for a long time after that. The coffee went cold. Outside, wind moved through the overgrown garden and the window screen rattled. I kept looking at the number on that policy, and I thought about every year since I'd turned 21. The student loans I'd taken out because I had no other choice. The car I couldn't afford to fix for 3 months. The medical bill I put on a payment plan. The wedding I had scraped and saved for penny by penny. And I felt something move through me that wasn't quite anger yet. It was quieter than anger. It was the feeling of finally understanding something you had been trying not to understand for a very long time. Desmond drove us home. I held the copies my aunt had made and stared out the window the whole way back. He didn't push me to talk. At one point he reached over and put his hand over mine. That was enough for a while. That evening I called a friend from college, Isaiah, who worked in estate planning, and told him what I'd found. He asked me to send photos of everything. An hour later he called back. The trust documents are legitimate, he said. The policy was real, and the filing was done correctly. Do you know which institution held the account? I looked at the bank letter and read him the name. Okay, he said carefully. You need to formally request the complete account history from that bank. And you need an attorney who handles trust disputes, someone with litigation experience. Do not confront your father first. If he knows what you're doing before the records are in your hands, things get complicated fast. I wrote down everything he said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table in our quiet house, and Desmond came and sat across from me without being asked. He looked me in the face, I said finally, and told me she left me nothing. Desmond nodded. He said it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. I know. I folded the documents back into the envelope. I'm going to find out exactly what happened to every dollar. It took 3 weeks to get the bank records. I hired an attorney named Audrey who had spent 15 years on estate litigation. She was methodical and calm in a way that made me feel fractionally less like I was falling through something. She reviewed the documents my aunt had kept, cross-referenced them with the records we requested, and then called me in. She set a printed spreadsheet on the desk between us. I looked at the columns, dates, amounts, transaction descriptions going back more than 15 years. I read down the list slowly. Home renovation, 2004. Family vacation, Outer Banks 2005, private school enrollment, fall semester, private school enrollment, spring semester, vehicle purchase, second home renovation, medical expenses, and when I asked Audrey about that line, she confirmed it was not for me. It was charges for Loretta from years ago. I kept reading. More school tuition payments, a boat registered to my father's name, another family vacation. Caleb's private school fees appeared in the records 8 separate times. I thought about my own public school years, the crowded classrooms, the second-hand backpack I carried through middle school, the year I wore shoes half a size too small because I didn't want to ask for new ones. I thought about Caleb's school photos on the refrigerator, always in a pressed collared shirt, always in front of a handsome brick building I'd never once been invited to visit. I wasn't angry at Caleb, he had been a child, he hadn't chosen any of this. I was wrecked by what it said about my father. How much is left in the account? I finally asked. Audrey looked at me without flinching. After the final transactions, $1,100. Out of $200,000. She gave me a moment. Then she said, "We have strong grounds to pursue recovery. What your father did as trustee, using designated funds for personal and unrelated family expenses, is a clear breach of fiduciary duty. The question of how much you can actually recover will depend on his current assets. But the legal case is solid." I nodded. "Take the weekend," she said. "Think it through." I didn't need the weekend, but I went home and sat with it for 2 days anyway, because some things deserve more than a quick decision. I drove to my father's house on a Tuesday afternoon without calling ahead. I told myself I just wanted to look him in the face when I mentioned my mother's name. Loretta was in the kitchen when I arrived. My father was in the living room watching television. He looked surprised to see me, but not unpleasantly so. He offered me a seat, asked if I wanted anything. He was in a comfortable mood, which somehow made everything worse. We talked about nothing for 10 minutes. The weather. Whether Desmond and I had settled in after the honeymoon. My father didn't mention the $300 from the reception. I didn't bring it up either. Then I said carefully, "I found some of Mom's old documents." The change in his expression was immediate, not panic, more like something behind his eyes shutting down. "What documents?" he said. "Papers my aunt had been keeping, from when Mom died." He leaned back. "Why is Estelle getting involved in things?" "She wasn't getting involved," I said. "She was holding on to what Mom gave her." "Your mother's been gone for almost 20 years, Celine." His voice had the practiced patience of someone who has shut down conversations before. "There's nothing from back then that needs to be reopened." "Was there a life insurance policy?" I asked. The silence lasted 3 seconds too long. "She had a small policy," he said carefully. "It barely covered the funeral." "That's interesting," I said, "because I have a copy of it." He stood up. He said my aunt didn't understand the full picture. He said there were expenses I wasn't aware of. He said he had done everything for this family. Then Loretta appeared in the kitchen doorway and looked between us, and my father pointed toward the front door and said he thought I should leave. "I raised you," he said. "I kept a roof over your head. Everything I did for this family." "Which family?" I asked. He didn't answer. I picked up my bag and walked out. I sat in my car for a long time before I started the engine. He hadn't denied the policy. He had done something more revealing. He had told me that whatever was true, he wasn't going to say it in that house. 2 weeks later, my aunt hosted a family dinner. She called my father and told him it was long overdue, that she was getting older, that she wanted to stop letting distance become permanent. He was cautious on the phone, she told me later, but he agreed. He came with Loretta. Caleb, who was 16 by then, came too. Desmond sat beside me. My aunt made roast chicken and green beans and rolls, the way she always cooked when something needed to be worked through. I think she learned that from my mother. We got through most of the meal without incident. My father was guarded but civil. Loretta talked more than usual, filling every silence. Caleb kept looking at his plate. After dessert was cleared, I reached beside my chair and picked up the folder I had placed there before anyone arrived. I set it on the table. "Dad," I said, "there's something we need to go through." His fork went still. I opened the folder. "This is the life insurance policy Mom took out in 1997. This is the trust document she had notarized that same year. And these," I pulled out the bank statements and laid them across the table one by one, "are the records of every withdrawal made from the trust account she set up for me." Loretta made a small sound. I pointed to the first line. "This is the home renovation from 2004. I moved to the next. This is Caleb's school enrollment, fall of 2007. I kept going. This is the boat. This is the Outer Banks trip. This one here is your dental work, Loretta." Nobody spoke. My father pushed his chair back slightly. "These records don't tell the complete story." "What is the complete story?" I asked. "I had a household to run. I made decisions under circumstances you don't understand." "You made those decisions with money that was legally mine," I said. My voice held steady. "Mom designated it specifically for my education and my future. It says so in the document right there. And when I was 21 and asked you whether she had left me anything, you told me there was nothing." Caleb was staring at the papers. He turned to his father. "Did you? Was that actually?" My father stood. "I raised you," he said to me. "Do you have any idea what that costs? I clothed you. I drove you to appointments. I kept the lights on." "I know all of that costs money," I said, "but that's not what this money was designated for. My mother was specific. She was very specific." My aunt had stopped moving entirely. She stood in the doorway to the kitchen, watching the man her sister had married. "Daniel," she said, his name quiet and final. He said, "Don't." "She was Bonnie's daughter," my aunt said. "Bonnie built that for her. You knew exactly what it was for." My father knocked his chair backward, walked through the living room, and out the front door. It closed hard behind him. We heard his car start in the driveway and pull away. Nobody moved for a long moment. Loretta sat with her hands folded on the table, not looking at anyone. Then Caleb said very quietly, "I didn't know." I looked at him, 16 years old, pale and genuinely shaken. "I know you didn't," I said. "I'm sorry, Celine." I reached across and put my hand briefly on his arm. "This isn't on you." My aunt sat down next to me. She took my hand in both of hers, and we sat there together at the table, with the documents spread between the empty dinner plates, and the neighborhood outside was quiet, and my mother had been gone for 19 years, and for the first time in all those years I felt like some part of her had finally reached me. The case never made it to a courtroom. Audrey sent a formal demand letter, and my father's attorney responded within 10 days recommending settlement. Negotiations ran for 6 weeks. The recovery wasn't complete. Some of the money was long gone, spent on things that couldn't be unwound, but the settlement was meaningful, and more importantly, it was put in writing. The trust had been mismanaged, the funds had been misused, and restitution was owed. Desmond and I used part of it to buy a house. A small brick place with a backyard and a kitchen that needs updating and a second bedroom we're still deciding what to do with. I used another portion to clear my student loans, the ones I had taken because I believed my father when he said my mother had left me nothing. My aunt and I talk every week now. She tells me stories about my mother I have never heard before, small ones, funny ones, the kind that turn a person into more than a photograph. I am learning who my mother was through her sister's eyes, and it is slow and bittersweet, and more valuable than anything else that came out of any of this. Caleb texted me 3 weeks after the dinner. He said he had asked his father directly, and his father had deflected, and that was answer enough for him. He said he didn't want to lose me as a sister. We have gotten coffee twice since then. We're figuring it out slowly. My father and I have not spoken. I don't know yet if we will. I still have the white envelope from my wedding reception. I put it in a small frame, all 650s still folded inside, and hung it above the desk in my home office. Not because those $300 meant anything on their own, but because of what they started. My father stood in the middle of my wedding and handed me that envelope and said it was everything I had earned from him. He thought he was ending something. Instead, he opened a door he had spent 20 years working very hard to keep shut. I think about my mother sometimes, sitting somewhere in 1997, filling out insurance paperwork, making arrangements she desperately hoped she would never need. She was trying to reach across time and protect me from something she could already feel coming. She couldn't have known exactly how things would unfold. But she did what she could with the time she had, and what she built was still there, waiting, when I finally thought to look. That is the thing I want you to carry with you, if you're holding something like this. Someone else's willingness to acknowledge your worth is not the same as your worth. Those two things have never been connected, no matter how much it can feel like they are. Even when the person who should see you most clearly is the one keeping the door closed. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you found out that someone had been quietly taking what was meant for you, for years, while you struggled alone and believed you had nothing coming, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe because the next story is already coming.